My name is Joe Sergi. Well, that's my nickname, Joe, but I go by M. Joseph. That's essentially my full name. Sergi as Sirgy, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Macro Marketing.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joe. Okay, so for the interview, we have like 4 thematic areas, and I would like to go through these now. Each area contains some questions. I mean, you know how it works. So let me start with the first one. So we mentioned the debate about the so-called theory-practice gap in marketing. Some authors said, okay, this is like a strong disconnection of like 2 worlds or 2 systems that are not connected anymore. Others said, okay, this might be the case, but it's not a problem. Others, again, would say, okay, that we don't have this problem. So what's your point of view in this discussion? Do you think there is a kind of gap?
Well, there's definitely a gap, but it is not as pronounced as it used to be. So there have been measures taken by various universities, various industry associations, various journals to close that gap. So it is not as pronounced as it used to be.
Okay, so the problem decreased. It's become smaller. Okay. Okay. Are you concerned about this topic, or are you more optimistic?
From my perspective as a journal editor, it depends on the journal, the academic journal. Our journal, which is essentially the Journal of Macro Marketing, we're not very much concerned about reaching the practitioners. We're very much concerned about reaching other scholars that are interested in societal issues and understanding the interface between the marketing institution and society at large. So from the perspective of providing practitioners cogent policies or managerial strategies, we're not very much concerned about that. Therefore, this gap between theory and practice is not very much an important issue from our perspective, at least, because of the nature of the journal. A lot of other journals out there that are very practitioners oriented. And these are the journals that should be concerned with that gap, but not in our case.
Okay, but if you leave the perspective as an editor behind, and if you look at marketing science in general, do you notice this gap there? Do you think it's a problem?
It's definitely a problem, not only in marketing, but it's literally in most other disciplines.
Yeah.
I mean, the science, the gap between science and the world of practice is huge. And as a matter of fact, a lot of sociologists now have been investigating this gap. There is a paradigm, or what you call a body of research dealing with the creation of knowledge, the diffusion of knowledge, and the utilization of knowledge. And sociologists of knowledge have been addressing this issue in various ways along various dimensions. So it is a very important issue that deals with not only with marketing, but a whole bunch of other disciplines.
Okay, looking at marketing, can you think of any factors that lead to this situation? Factors that support a kind of divide?
Right. The major factor seems to be the push for quality publishing. Over the years, scholars, in the context of marketing and in other disciplines, have pushed for quality research. And therefore the standards of quality research has been sort of elevated to the point where you can't publish an academic journal unless your study is fantastic in terms of meeting those criteria, meeting those standards. Now, when you do this, you're literally alienating those people who are just interested in the study findings without getting so bogged down with the methodological standards.
Yeah.
So it's gotten up to a point where we're talking to ourselves, meaning scholars, academicians. We're talking among ourselves, and therefore we've alienated much of the broader audience, which you might call the practitioner audience. So we have now new journals that speak to that audience. For example, the Journal of Marketing Management, Harvard Business Review, and so forth. There's so many other journals that are now dedicated to focus on the practitioner side, and therefore that divide between the world of practice and the world of academia has probably become wider.
Okay, so I understood you mentioned the standards for publication on the one hand, and on the other hand, the audiences, which are more differentiated between journals now. Can you think of more factors?
That seems to be the primary factor, at least in my mind.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll just focus on that.
Okay. And some seconds before, you mentioned that you think that the gap decreases, that it gets smaller. Which initiatives helped to diminish this gap?
Okay, well, it's the initiatives, the things that we have done in the past, in the more recent past, at least in the last 20 to 30 years, include things that we do at the university level. So let's say where I'm at, which is Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University in the state of Virginia, we have in our College of Business several initiatives, well, actually, they're not initiatives, they have been institutionalized. Take, for example, the idea of having an advisory board. So each department, and at the college level, we have an advisory board, and most of these people on the advisory board are recruited from the world of practice. So we have, again, chief marketing officers or large corporations. We have, again, CEOs. We have CFOs, all kinds of people that come from the world of practice, and they give us their point of view of what we need to focus on in order to help our students and appeal to the world of practice. So that's one initiative. We also have at the college a publicity, public relations officer, and now each department has its own. And what we try to do with that particular position is to try and translate much of the research that the faculty do in newsletters that appeal to students, that appeal to the world of practice, and these newsletters or magazines are essentially disseminated widely through a distribution list involving past students, as well as especially those people who sort of made it big in the world of practice. So these are two initiatives. another initiative is a number of College of Businesses have been trying to give credit to faculty that reach out to the business world and do consulting. So in the past, it has been, especially in large universities where we're talking about it's publish or perish. Now the standards are somewhat different in the sense that, yes, you need to publish, but also one of the other requirements is a service to the business community. So now many deans of College of Businesses and schools of businesses have adopted this evaluation criteria. So when faculty come up for promotion and tenure, they take into account the service to the business community type of criterion. Yes, right. Then also there is, we tend to hire adjuncts. Adjuncts, are you familiar with adjunct positions in the School of Business? Adjunct positions are people that come from the world of practice and teach courses. They're not regular faculty. We call them tenure track. But again, these people come from the world of business and they teach classes on the side, sort of like a part-time job. So we encourage that, but it has to be limited, because if we do too much of that, then that diminishes our performance in relation to the accreditation requirements. So in terms of accreditation, we have to be careful not to overdo this. But yeah, this is another attempt to reach out to essentially to close that gap between the world of practice and what we do in academia.
So much more connection.
That's at the university. Yes. So that's what we do at the university. Also, there are other initiatives. Most deans now and department heads encourage their faculty to invite guest lecturers. So, people from the business community to come and serve as guest lecturer to speak on a certain topic to their students in their courses or classes. So this is another dimension of trying to close that gap between the world of practice and academia. That's at the university level. Now we do other kinds of things in terms of industry associations, in terms of in terms of the journals, in terms of large corporations reaching out. We have consulting companies, large consulting companies that also reach out and try to bridge that gap. I can talk at length about these other
okay, yeah, but I have a certain impression now of all the manifold initiatives that are there, and that's really supportable. Looking at progress in marketing, which role do we attribute to managers? Is progress also driven by managers, or is it just the researchers?
Progress in relation to what?
In marketing, so to push marketing thinking forward.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the things that we try to do. At least we try to encourage our faculty, our marketing faculty, to engage in the kind of research that is important in the world of practice. So we, again, through our advisory boards, through our consulting, we encourage our faculty to address issues that are important in the world of practice, as well as society at large. Okay. So there's definitely an initiative to do that, and faculty are evaluated on that dimension too.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much. Looking at marketing science, itself, do you think it's more a natural science or more a social science?
Oh, definitely a social science.
Social. Okay. And why?
Why? Um,
Well, going through papers, sometimes you get the impression that it's more natural science. You try to find basic rules that are there forever as a counterpoint. So why is it so clearly a social science in your point of view?
well, the topics are
Mhm.
99% social science. The administrative sciences, by definition, are embedded in the social, behavioral, policy sciences. Um, the natural sciences, when you're talking about things like neuroscience or biology, or you talk about engineering, well, biotechnical engineering, chemistry, and all of the ecology. These are topics that are not, well, I wouldn't say that they're not incorporated in what we do. They do, but we speak to these social, administrative, policy dimensions of these issues, and not necessarily the natural science types of dimensions.
Okay, yeah, understood. Okay, thank you very much. So now I'm coming to the next section, which is more about the journals itself and their perspective. Looking at the many marketing journals that we have, or many journals in the marketing field, which journals do you consider the most influential ones? And I not only mean like citation scores and impression rates, but as a whole, which journals are the most influential ones from your point of view?
From my point of view, well, I would be very biased. I would say the Journal of Macro Marketing is one of the most influential, in the sense that it deals with very important topics, topics that are important to society at large. The Journal of Public Policy and Marketing also deals with very important topics dealing with societal issues, and so from my vantage point, yes. But again, in the College of Business, in our discipline, we have elite journals, and and you know what the elite journals are. Journal of Marketing, the Journal of Marketing Research, the Journal of Consumer Research, the Journal of the Academy of Marketing Science, and so forth. And that's based on the sort of the scholarly sentiment within the discipline. Yes.
Okay. I understood from what you said before, your Journal of Macro Marketing, is more targeting at researchers and less targeting practitioners or managers itself. Is that correct?
Correct. Which actually makes the distinction between the Journal of Macro Marketing and the Journal of Public Policy and Marketing. The Journal of Public Policy and Marketing, they do make a sincere attempt to reach out to policymakers. So people in government that address issues dealing with public policy and the interface between public policy and marketing. We're a little bit more macro. I mean, so we deal with, yes, public policy issues are important, but we go beyond that.
Yeah, but your readers are more researchers than managers, marketing officers, and so on. Okay, I understand. Okay, looking at relevance, I mean, if you need to evaluate papers that are offered for your journal, which criteria do you use to evaluate relevance?
Well, most of us are very much in tune with all the important issues of our time, whether they are issues related to war and peace, or climate change, or the pandemics, or there are very important issues, issues of discrimination, issues of diversity, issues of the poor people, issues of subsistence, issues of quality of life. These are important issues, and over the years we have established a sense of what's important or what's relevant, based on what's out there, and on our understanding of the important issues of our time. And we make those decisions based on that kind of understanding. So relevance is very much dictated by our own understanding of what's important to society at large, in the global community.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Do you have any practitioners as reviewers for your papers, or is it just academia?
Yeah, we don't.
Okay. Researchers.
Not in our journal.
Yeah. It seems to be clear looking at your target group. Okay.
Right.
So do you have writers or any persons from which are non-scientists that contribute papers to your journal? I guess not, but the question is, do you have it?
No.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Okay, next section is about you as an editor and your influence on the whole situation. Looking at yourself and considering your own behavior, how do you learn about new knowledge and new trends in marketing? How do you stay informed?
I read a lot.
Reading, yeah.
I read a lot.
You must read as an editor.
Yeah, that's right. I not only read the papers that come in and I kind of, make decisions about acceptance and rejection. I oversee many associate editors that are involved, and what I do is, one thing that also keeps me engaged and involved is I keep track of the table of contents that of other journals. We have a number of listservs that that at least I'm a member of. One of them is ELMAR, which is the listserv of the American Marketing Association, and literally every few weeks we get a list of table of contents of all the journals in marketing, and I browse through them and I see what are the topics that are involved in these journals, what's been published, and I focus on of course those publications that are important to society. So the ones that have what you might call a social dimension, and I open up the abstract at least, and I read the abstracts, and if if I think it's more informative to actually read the actual whole article, I do that. So I stay informed that way.
Yeah, reading. Any conferences or any other activities?
Oh yes. I go to a lot of conferences. So yes, I go to conferences, marketing conferences, but also one of my areas is, and I do a lot of research in the area of quality of life.
I saw books.
And Thank you. And therefore, I go to conferences also outside of marketing related to quality of life and psychology, and especially industrial organizational types of conferences. Yes.
Okay. Do you have a closer link to managers? Are you in any kind of networking with managers, or do you take on consulting jobs? So is there any link to practical management for you?
I used to. Now I'm retired. So my consulting work has sort of diminished considerably. But I used to do some consulting in some of the major companies. And therefore, through my consulting, I stay connected. I used to stay connected, not anymore.
And before you became a professor, have you been or were you in a management job before that, or is it just from studying to PhD to university professor? So how any practical phase, any practical steps in your career in that way?
Well, yes. When there was a lot of practical stuff that I did when I was in the military service. That was when I was very young. Then after I got my bachelor's degree, I worked in the real world, doing industrial, organizational, personnel kinds of management types of issues. So I used to be an employment interviewer and a personnel analyst, and I did that for a few years. And then I went back to graduate school, and I ended up with a PhD in industrial organizational psychology. But from that point, I went into the world of academia, and I became a professor after I got my PhD from University of Massachusetts. In 1979, I became an assistant professor at Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University. And I've been there until my recent retirement ever since. So I served 41 years at the university.
Wow.
Right. But, during that tenure, I did a lot of consulting. I stayed in touch with the business community. I also taught courses that required this interface between education and the business world. Let me give you an example. I used to teach the international marketing management course. And in that context, we used to assign students to work with companies, actual companies, to come up with international marketing plans for the companies. And the state of Virginia also helped us make the connections between those companies and our students. So I did that for many, many years. And that gave me a good understanding of what's happening in the world of practice.
Okay, thank you. Looking at the managers, what are your perceptions about how those managers engage to learn about the newest marketing theory? So how do they stay up to date? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that there is definitely a shortcoming in the way that marketing managers reach out and stay abreast with all the new academic developments. I don't see that happening. Okay. But some of them, what they do is they read business magazines, and this is a good thing. Business magazines, we have a whole bunch of business magazines out there, from entrepreneurship to, Harvard Business Review and a bunch of others. And they read those magazines, which is a good thing. And the news media involved, the reporters that write for those magazines tend to make an attempt to bridge that gap between academia and the world of business. So that's how marketing managers stay in touch, by reading business magazines and other newspapers like the Wall Street Journal, for example. And the reporter that write for those magazines and newspapers, they reach out to us as academics. So there is a sort of a bridging of the gap through these business magazines, and this is how marketing managers stay in touch.
Anything more that you perceive that's happening? What managers are doing in this regard?
There have been attempts, and there are still attempts, in terms of some of the major associations, like the American Marketing Association, or the Academy of Marketing Science, for example, or there are a whole bunch of other advertising promotion types of associations, to reach out to the business community and get them involved in those conferences. And that's definitely a good thing. It kind of serves to bridge that gap between the world of practice and.
Okay, thank you. Last part is about, how could we improve the situation? And I understood that you have certain concerns about is. So let's ask you very openly, which ideas do you have to get forward with this, or to close the gap between researchers and managers?
I think those initiatives, what we have in place in terms of what we've been doing at the university level, at the industry association level, and are making a good attempt to bridge that gap. I don't think I have specifically new ideas that would allow us to do any better. I would say just increase the momentum of what we're doing right now. To make a sincere and wholesome attempt to bridge that gap. And so there is a mechanism in place. So just do more of that.
Good. And for you as an editor, do you think you could play a part in this move forward?
Not in the context of my journal.
And other editors?
Oh yes, definitely other editors.
Ideas for them?
Yes, there are a number of other journals, and I'm thinking in terms of Journal of Consumer Research, for example, and the Journal of Marketing, the Journal of Service Research. Many of those other editors are creating newsletters and disseminating, some key articles to the world of practice, the marketing community, and they've been doing a good job at that. So I certainly encourage those other editors who at least have a targeted audience in the world of practice to do more of that.
If you send out a marketing journal article to a manager, do you think this article will be read and understood?
No.
Why?
Well, because it's written in a language, it's too technical. It's too technical. So what I see now that in some other journals is that we have they hire a person from communication, and they try and translate, some of these important articles in a way that people can understand it. I used to be an editor-in-chief of Applied Research and Quality of Life, which is a quality of life journal. And Springer was essentially the publisher back then, and it still is. And what Springer used to do is I, as an editor, would focus on key articles that I think are important, and I give them to Springer. It says, translate,
Yeah.
translate those articles into something people can understand, something a little bit less technical, and then put them on the website and try and disseminate those articles in the best way to the lay audience. Yeah. So, you know, that mechanism worked when I was editor in chief of Applied Research and Quality of Life. We'd like to do more of that in marketing.
Okay, so I understood. It's about the length of the articles. It's about the language. We need more translation. And several times you mentioned Harvard Business Review, which apparently is doing a great job reaching out to managers as well.
Absolutely.
Do you notice other, like things that we could learn from Harvard Business Review or Harvard Business Manager Journal when it comes to reaching out to managers? What are they doing a good job on?
Addressing important topics, addressing especially important topics, not only in the context of the business world, but society at large. You know, things like, for example, automation, AI, the multi-channels. People, when they, for example, go into and they seek information on the internet, and they go to a retail store, and how these types of experiences coalesce to try and determine purchase decisions. You know, are you familiar with Advertising Age? Advertising Age is one of those business magazines that have been fantastic. They've been doing so well over the years. Every marketing related association should put out not only its own academic journals, but should put out a practitioner kind of a journal. You know, I'm thinking also in terms of psychology. The American Psychological Associations for many years have put out a magazine, not a journal, a magazine, which is called Psychology Today. So, you know, I hope that many of the marketing related associations would put out also practitioners types of magazines that would reach out to the lay audience and simplify and translate much of the academic research to that audience.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So there's quite a bit of room for improvement. We can do better.
Yeah. So as a final question, how confident are you that this situation will be better in the future? I mean, you were a bit optimistic, or you reported that it has improved. Do you think there will be more improvement, or do you think it will stay on this level?
I hope that it will further improve. I'm optimistic. And, you know, people like you addressing those topics and making the topic of the gap between the world of practice and academic research, and creating an awareness of that shortcoming is very important. And the more we do this, the more we'd be able to do better in terms of closing that gap.
Okay.
So I commend you and your colleagues for doing this.
Super, yeah. And we would like to thank you for sharing your insights with us. And